Isaac with the Philistines by Ginzberg. The life of Isaac was a faithful reflex of the life of his father. Abraham had to leave his birthplace, so also Isaac. Abraham was exposed to the risk of losing his wife, so also Isaac. The Philistines were envious of Abraham, so also of Isaac. Abraham long remained childless, so also Isaac. Abraham begot one pious son and one wicked son, so also Isaac. And finally, as in the time of Abraham, so also in the time of Isaac, a famine came upon the land. 52. At first Isaac intended to follow the example of his father and remove to Egypt. But God appeared unto him and spake, Thou art a perfect sacrifice, without a blemish, and as a burnt offering is made unfit, if it is taken outside of the sanctuary, so thou wouldst be profaned, if thou shouldst happen outside of the holy land. Remain in the land, and endeavor to cultivate it. In this land dwells the Shekinah, and in days to come I will give unto thy children the realms possessed by mighty rulers, first a part thereof, and the whole in the Messianic time. Isaac obeyed the command of God, and he settled in Gerar. When he noticed that the inhabitants of the place began to have designs upon his wife, he followed the example of Abraham and pretended she was his sister. The report of Rebekah's beauty reached the king himself, but he was mindful of the great danger to which he had once exposed himself on a similar occasion, and he left Isaac and his wife unmolested. 55. After they had been in Gerar for 3 months, Abimelech noticed that the manner of Isaac, who lived in the outer court of the royal palace, was that of a husband toward Rebekah. He called him to account, saying, It might have happened to the king himself to take the woman thou didst call thy sister. 57. Indeed, Isaac lay under the suspicion of having illicit intercourse with Rebekah, for at first the people of the place would not believe that she was his wife. When Isaac persisted in his statement, 58, Abimelech sent his grandees for them, ordered them to be arrayed in royal vestments, and had it proclaimed before them, as they rode through the city, These two are man and wife. He that toucheth this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. Thereafter the king invited Isaac to settle in his domains, and he assigned fields and vineyards to him for cultivation, the best the land afforded. But Isaac was not self-interested. The tithe of all he possessed he gave to the poor of Gerar. Thus he was the first to introduce the law of tithing for the poor, as his father Abraham had been the first to separate the priest's portion from his fortune. 60. Isaac was rewarded by abundant harvests. The land yielded 100 times more than was expected, though the soil was barren and the year unfruitful. He grew so rich that people wished to have the dung from Isaac's she-mules rather than Abimelech's gold and silver. 61. But his wealth called forth the envy of the Philistines, for it is characteristic of the wicked that they begrudge their fellowmen the good, and rejoice when they see evil descend upon them, and envy brings hatred in its wake. And so the Philistines first envied Isaac and then hated him. In their enmity toward him, they stopped the wells which Abraham had had his servants dig. Thus they broke their covenant with Abraham and were faithless, and they have only themselves to blame if they were exterminated later on by the Israelites. Isaac departed from Gerar and began to dig again the wells of water which they had digged in the days of Abraham his father, and which the Philistines had stopped. His reverence for his father was so great that he even restored the names by which Abraham had called the wells. To reward him for his filial respect, the Lord left the name of Isaac unchanged, while his father and his son had to submit to new names. 62. After 4 attempts to secure water, Isaac was successful. He found the well of water that followed the patriarchs. Abraham had obtained it after 3 diggings, hence the name of the well Beersheba, the well of 7 diggings. The same well that will supply water to Jerusalem and its environs in the Messianic time. 63. Isaac's success with his wells but served to increase the envy of the Philistines, for he had come upon water in a most unlikely spot, and besides, in a year of drouth. But the Lord fulfills the desire of them that fear him. As Isaac executed the will of his Creator, so God accomplished his desire. And Abimelech, the king of Gerar, speedily came to see that God was on the side of Isaac. For to chastise him for having instigated Isaac's removal from Gerar, his house was ravaged by robbers in the night, and he himself was stricken with leprosy. 65. The wells of the Philistines ran dry as soon as Isaac left Gerar, and also the trees failed to yield their fruit. None could be in doubt, but that these things were the castigation for their unkindness. Now Abimelech entreated his friends, especially the administrator of his kingdom, to accompany him to Isaac and help him win back his friendship. 66 Abimelech and the Philistines spake thus to Isaac, We have convinced ourselves that the Shekinah is with thee, and therefore we desire thee to renew the covenant which thy father made with us, that thou wilt do us no hurt, as we also did not touch thee. Isaac consented. It illustrates the character of the Philistines strikingly that they took credit unto themselves for having done him no hurt. It shows that they would have been glad to inflict harm upon him, for the soul of the wicked desireth evil. The place in which the covenant was made between Isaac and the Philistines was called Shibah, for two reasons, because an oath was sworn there, and as a memorial of the fact that even the heathen are bound to observe the 7 Noachian laws. 67. For all the wonders executed by God for Isaac, and all the good he enjoyed throughout his life, he is indebted to the merits of his father. For his own merits, he will be rewarded in future. 68. On the great day of judgment, it will be Isaac who will redeem his descendants from Gehenna. On that day the Lord will speak to Abraham, Thy children have sinned, and Abraham will make reply, Then let them be wiped out, that thy name be sanctified. The Lord will turn to Jacob, thinking that he who had suffered so much in bringing his sons to manhood's estate would display more love for his posterity. But Jacob will give the same answer as Abraham. Then God will say, The old have no understanding, and the young no counsel. I will now go to Isaac. Isaac, God will address him, Thy children have sinned, and Isaac will reply, O Lord of the world, sayest thou my children and not thine? When they stood at Mount Sinai and declared themselves ready to execute all thy bidding before even they heard it, thou didst call Israel my firstborn, and now they are my children and not thine. Let us consider, the years of a man are 70, from these 20 are to be deducted, for thou inflictest no punishment upon those under 20. Of the 50 years that are left, 1/2 are to be deducted for the nights passed in sleep. There remain only 25 years, and these are to be diminished by 12.5, the time spent in praying, eating, and attending to other needs in life, during which men commit no sins. That leaves only 12 years and a half. If thou wilt take these upon thyself, well and good. If not, do thou take 1/2 thereof, and I will take the other half. The descendants of Isaac will then say, Verily thou art our true father. But he will point to God and admonish them, Nay, give not your praises to me, but to God alone. And Israel, with eyes directed heavenward, will say, Thou, O Lord, art our Father, our Redeemer from everlasting is thy name. 69. It was Isaac, or, as he is sometimes called, Elihu the son of Barashel, who revealed the wonderful mysteries of nature in his arguments with Job 70. At the end of the years of famine, God appeared unto Isaac, and bade him return to Canaan. Isaac did as he was commanded, and he settled in Hebron. At this time he sent his younger son Jacob to the Bet HaMidrash of Shem and Eber to study the law of the Lord. Jacob remained there 32 years. As for Esau, he refused to learn, and he remained in the house of his father. The chase was his only occupation, and as he pursued beasts, so he pursued men, seeking to capture them with cunning and deceit. On one of his hunting expeditions, Esau came to Mount Seir, where he became acquainted with Judith of the family of Ham, and he took her unto himself as his wife, and brought her to his father at Hebron. 10 years later, when Shem his teacher died, Jacob returned home at the age of 50. Another 6 years passed, and Rebekah received the joyful news that her sister-in-law Adnah, the wife of Laban, who, like all the women of his house, had been childless until then, had given birth to twin daughters, Leah and Rachel. 71. Rebekah, weary of her life on account of the woman chosen by her older son, exhorted Jacob not to marry one of the daughters of Canaan, but a maiden of the family of Abraham. He assured his mother that the words of Abraham, bidding him to marry no woman of the Canaanites, were graven upon his memory, and for this reason he was still unmarried, though he had attained the age of 62, and Esau had been urging him for 22 years past to follow his example, and wed a daughter of the people of the land, in which they lived. He had heard that his uncle Laban had daughters, and he was resolved to choose one of them as his wife. Deeply moved by the words of her son, Rebekah thanked him and gave praise unto God with the words, Blessed be the Lord God, and may his holy name be blessed forever and ever, who hath given me Jacob as a pure son and a holy seed. For he is thine, and thine shall his seed be continually and throughout all the generations forevermore. Bless him, O Lord, and place in my mouth the blessing of righteousness, that I may bless him. And when the Spirit of the Lord came over her, she laid her hands upon the head of Jacob and gave him her maternal blessing. It ended with the words, May the Lord of the world love thee, as the heart of thy affectionate mother rejoices in thee, and may he bless thee.